27 on SiriusXM Progress 147. What does that mean? 147 days to the most important election of our lives. And every day I say this on my show, stay angry. Staying angry is the key emotion to winning this election. But you don't need me to keep any of us angry. Donald Trump gives that every single day. And today, while George Floyd was being buried in Houston, what was Donald Trump doing? He was literally on Twitter defending police brutality. I'm not exaggerating. He was literally on Twitter defending police brutality while George Floyd, a man murdered at the hands of police brutality, was being buried. What I mean by that is Donald Trump tweeted earlier in the day defending the police in the case of 75-year-old Martin Cugino, who, if you don't know his name, you likely saw the video. That was the 75-year-old man in Buffalo, New York, who the two police officers pushed down. He fell, hit his head on the sidewalk, was bleeding in a pool of blood. The police didn't help him. Two of the officers were charged with assault. The local police in Buffalo resigned because they were angry that their fellow officers were charged for assaulting someone. What does Trump tweet today? Buffalo protesters shoved by police could be Antifa provocateur. And goes on to say, could it be a setup? Could it be a setup? The 75-year-old man, are you saying set himself up to fall and hit his head and split it on the sidewalk and is in intensive care? Now he's out of intensive care, but he's still in the hospital? Is that what they're saying? Governor Cuomo today slammed Donald Trump, saying, show some decency, show some humanity. When you think of Donald Trump, all I can say is this. Donald Trump is the person you teach your children never to be. He's the opposite of what you want your children to be. He's the opposite of everything we should all want our children or grandchildren, our friends, or our fellow Americans to be. But he is the head of the Republican Party. 95% approval rating. That's who they're led by. That monster. So today on the show, we're going to play some clips from George Floyd's funeral. Some great speakers there. Impassioned pleas by family members of George Floyd, his brother, his niece, Reverend Al Sharpton, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, Representative Al Green. But the theme through it all was one thing: justice. Simple word, justice. But what does justice mean in this context? What is justice really? If you go to the dictionary, it really doesn't help. Justice in the dictionary is defined as the idea of the principle of moral rightness, decency. Speaks of fairness. But is that justice here? Is that justice in the case of George Floyd? Is justice in the case of George Floyd the four officers who murdered him going to jail? Or is justice more than that? Something bigger. You know, we live in a country that's filled with contradictions. A country where you can feel good about exalting the best language of Supreme Court decisions or white elected officials. Then the flip side is the dark underbelly of our nation, which has been here since day one because our original Constitution enshrined white supremacy. It had the fugitive slave clause, and if a slave ran free, by the words of our Constitution that our founding fathers put on paper, had to be returned to the owner. So what is justice? Look at the words of the 1967 Supreme Court decision, famous civil rights case, Loving versus Virginia, which struck down laws which made it a crime for blacks and whites to get married. This is a beautiful legal decision. It moved the country forward. And in that decision, it said, we have consistently denied the constitutionality of measures which restrict the right of citizens on account of race. You can cite this and go, this is the aspiration of America. But when you look at those words and you look at reality, you understand they don't connect whatsoever. We have consistently denied the constitutionality of measures that restrict the rights of citizens on account of race. Then why do we have systemic racism in our policing and our criminal justice today in 2020? That was 1967. Why is it in America, and I'll give you examples from some surveys and studies, which I'll go through in more detail on my show tonight. 2019 Stanford University study examined over 100 million traffic stops around the country. They found, on average, black drivers 20% more likely than white drivers to be pulled over. In the case of use of deadly force, various studies have found that if you're black, it's 2 to 3 times more likely the police are going to kill you than if you're white. And even beyond the stopping and the searches of your car and the conviction, even at the time of sentencing for a crime, we see a racial disparity. As a study found in 2018, blacks and whites committed the same felony in federal court with the same prior convictions. Blacks, on average, get a 20% more penalty, more prison sentence, more fines, 20%. How is this consistent with the idea that anything that is an account of race is constitutionally impermissible in our nation? That's the promise, equality under the law, but we don't have it, nothing close to it. Yet Donald Trump yesterday literally denied there's systemic racism. And that wasn't a mistake, because Bill Barr, as AG on Sunday, said the same thing. There's no systemic racism. Same thing, Chad Wolf, Department of Homeland Security head, said Sunday on TV, there is no systemic racism. There's just a few bad apples. When you see these numbers, it's not a few bad apples. It's not even the few bad trees. The whole orchard is infected. So what is justice? Is justice tearing down this apple orchard and starting anew? And I mean, with regard to the policing and the criminal justice system? Is it defunding the police like some say? Is it massive reforms? What will get us to justice in this country? To me, that's the only question. It shouldn't be about talking points and buzzwords, defund the police or not. What does that mean to people? It's scaring half the people. That's not the point. The point is a fundamentally, systemically racist policing system and criminal justice system. It's been since day one of this nation. Justice means addressing this in a way that works. So on the show tonight, we're going to talk about this, and I sincerely want to hear from you. What does justice mean to you? What would be justice for it? What would be justice for the African American community who were brought here beginning as slaves over 400 years ago and had to suffer through Jim Crow laws and discrimination enforced by our law? Enforced by law and not in 1700, 1800. I'm talking through 1964 and 1968 before the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act. What is justice? That's what we're going to talk about on the show. We want to make sure that George Floyd's death is not in vain, that this is a moment that changes things for future generations. So we don't have the same conversation every 3 months on my show. How about that, America? So again, my show tonight's live, 6 to 9 p.m., Channel 127, Sirius XM Progress. Get some great guests. Congressman Bonnie Watson-Coleman from New Jersey, my home state's going to join us. Congressman Mark Pocan, a great guy from Wisconsin, co-chair of Congressional Progressive Caucus. And third hour Tuesday, it's Law and Disorder with MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savala. So join me, Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. And if you don't subscribe to Sirius XM, then hope you'll check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/deanofradio. I post clips there every day from the show. You can check it out, engage with me, email. Thanks for tuning in to the little preview of tonight's Dean OBW.